from the studio that brought you the Train course with 32 parts, the absolute banger with the cartoon shader or whatever the hell he did. Today, embark on a new adventure, because in this video we will go beyond just simple modeling. We will go beyond just 3D modeling. Today we create the most epic character there is, because I introduce to you Details. The new saga continues, and that's not making new anymore, and I just fucked that up, but it's okay, okay? Let's just go to the video already. Hello back guys to a new video, and welcome to the creation of our own character. Again, this is our new course. This is, I mean, really a course. I will do almost every single step with you guys, but there's a little bit of I would call it difference from the last time we actually did this together. I'm not going to go through every single detail on how to do this, because I will consider this an intermediate course, right? This will be more complex than what we did before, and I will go with you right through like how to do a little more complex stuff, but all the basics, like how to model, you know, like the simple shapes from this robot. I'm not going to, you know, bother you with all that, because there will be again like 3 hours, you know, 5 videos of 3 hours just to model something. I don't want to do that anymore, right? I want for you to be able to get this character in time with however you want, and I also don't want to influence you too much, right? That's why if you're new to Blender, and if you're actually new to a 3D software and you just want to kind of go about and learn this and how to model, if this is your first time using Blender, I recommend you my playlist of the 3D Train tutorial. It gets you from point 0 to point hero in no time, right? In this one, we kind of forget about all the technical stuff, forget about all the smart stuff, and we're just gonna have some fun, really, right? I want you to really be able to create your character and model it the way you want to. I will give you a few ways, a few new tricks, right? And a few new ways to do stuff, but I want you to go through it. Now, the reason I am making this video, because, you know, that would come the question, then what are you showing us? How you do stuff? Yes. That is kind of the point, one. And secondly, it will be, again, I will show you more tricks on how to improve your workflow and how to do some stuff that I don't think I explained well enough, or that I think it's actually a little more interesting. And I'll be totally honest with you, a robot compared to a train might be a little more interesting. I'm just saying, in my opinion, if you want to do this, and again, this is an intermediate course, it's different. So I expect you to know how to model basic stuff and how to, you know, move around Blender pretty easily, right? Like, you already know your ways around here. That way, I'm not gonna show you every single stuff. So what I did is I didn't show you everything here. I just show you the more complex stuff and the new tricks, and just hover a little bit over what I did to get up to this result. I want you to create, you know, your own specific details for your character. I want you to think on how that character should look. Think on what he should do. Think about the kind of environment you're going to put your character in. So with that being said, let us actually get into the video and let us create more of this robot. But before we do that, please don't forget, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, and if you did not like it, you know what, I dare you to leave a like on this video. And if you don't like to be dared, well, leave a like on the video, because I'm not gonna dare you. I'm gonna dare all the others that actually like to be there. Yeah, this will work for sure. And also please share this video for others to be able to see and, you know, expand the community. Again, my goal is to get to 500 subscribers right now and really grow this channel as much as possible. So with this being said, let's actually get into the video. Guys, so for this video, we're actually gonna go pretty fast on how to create the details. Is this done? Not exactly. We're still a little bit away from what I want. So I want to give this robot a little more details. I am very happy with how it turns out. I think it's actually pretty good. And as you can see, I was able to introduce, well, more or less anyway, a little bit of everything from each of the references we got. Even from the one from Pinterest that I talked about, I did get at least ideas to how to do stuff. But I'm pretty happy, honestly, with how this turns out. So let's go through how to do most of the stuff anyway. So first things first, we're gonna start off with something that I think is a little more interesting. It's actually this part right here for the arm. So I know I did show you how to do these extrudes, which again, it's most of the things we will do is extrude faces. I think it gives interesting vibes when you see like a geometry and you actually just create, you know, a little bit of more geometry into it. But this part right here, and I'm talking just about this one, it's actually created using the knife tool. Now, if you don't know what the knife tool is, again, I would really advise you to check out my beginner tutorial. It's a course where I basically talk about modeling in detail. I go over absolutely every single thing. Knife tool is one of the things I go about, but here I will show you how to use it. So you just have to go into edit mode, go into vertex mode because it's easier to see. And all you gotta do is press K. Now, if you press K, you'll have a little knife icon that shows, and all you gotta do is just actually draw what you want to have, you know, the geometry you want to have. Now, the thing with it is, right, you kind of have to connect it to stuff. So the way, the reason that didn't work for me right there, let me actually just show it one more time, is because I don't actually have a geometry. Now, if I choose this vertex, it will actually stick around, and I can choose this one, and now I created the geometry I can work with. Now, of course, I don't want to work with that one, so I'm not gonna keep it. But you kind of got a point. This is the exact same way I got this. The difference is I actually didn't have to use all that. What I did is I basically used the geometry I already had. I just created a loop cut right around here, beveled it, and then just created a little bit of a, you know, some edges with this. That's kind of about it, and we're good to go. Now, what else did I do that's a little more interesting? I would say that the cables here for the wheels is one of the more interesting parts. It's not that big of a deal, but it's a little bit tedious. I'm not gonna lie to you. It took a little bit of time, which is happy I'm not showing it necessarily because it's kind of tedious, honestly. This is just a Bezier curve. Just add a Bezier curve. And actually, let me get this up so that it actually intersects this, so we don't have any, you know, show. And then just play with your geometry, so you round it up around your object. These handles to help me out, and it's manually done. I just extruded and played around with the geometry until I got what I needed, just like you saw me doing right there, right? So just take the handles, you know, scale them, rotate them, do whatever you can to actually make them fit, you know, with what we got. It's not that hard to do, but it's, again, definitely tedious, and you have to spend a little bit of time to do it. Again, nothing that crazy, nothing that important, and nothing really you can't do. However, one thing that is a little maybe harder to explain, it's easier to show, and it's actually something I don't think I explained well enough in the beginner tutorial, and I think it's pretty important to understand. It's actually how to get these kind of cuts, and also how you should work with Boolean. Yeah, the body cutter right here, so this. So what I basically need, right, is something to cut these faces, well, not these faces, but like these edges inside of my body. Now, of course, I can actually model them by hand, but there are two reasons I don't want to do this. First, it will take a little bit more time. Secondly, that's destructive work, which means if I do that, I cannot reverse it. I have to either have a duplicate of my body, either have to undo or take it all from the start, which I don't really want to do. I want to create this. If I don't like it, just change it and see what happens, right? So for example, I did this with a body cutter. Now, what's the difference between using the bool tool and the Boolean modifier. So what bool tool will do, right, if you use the auto Boolean, it's actually not gonna help us too much because yes, it will do what we need. It will cut the object, but the problem is it will actually also apply the Boolean. So it's basically the same thing with putting a Boolean modifier here, but instead of just having it here and then being able to, you know, move around with it, it's already applying it. Now, there are two reasons you want to kind of use this, and I did use this already. Right, so for this one, for example, I used the bool tool, right? Now, the reason that actually helped me out was because, and actually you can see right here that there's a problem. It created a vertex that I actually don't need, which is the same with these two. I don't need those, right? That's a problem that the bool tool created because it doesn't really understand sometimes how to work with the geometry. So that's one of the downsides of using a bool tool instead of the Boolean modifier. It sometimes creates stupid geometry because it doesn't really understand how to work. It's pretty easy to actually, you know, just go in, you know, take a few edges out just like you saw me do right now. But that's basically how it works, right? You just use this when you know for sure you're going to also want to apply the Boolean modifier like I wanted for this part. However, if you're not so sure about that, don't do that, okay? Just apply a Boolean modifier, alright, like I did here, and then you can just play around with your object. So for example, what I did here is create a plane, made these edges right here, extruded them, and then I had to play around because here's the deal. You cannot just do this part and then extrude it all the way to the back, because what will that do? That will cut through our whole body, right? So if you can see it right here from the side, this part here enters just a little bit inside, just to cut a little bit from our body, while this one down here will go like this, following the body, entering again just a little bit so it can cut it. And this one does basically the same thing. And actually, again, I found a little bit of a problem. This is a little too much on the side. And the reason is the mirror that I used on the Y is using the body, which I don't think. The center is right here. So basically, this part on the down is actually in the lower part. It's not gonna be perfect for what I have, because I have a trapezoidal body. So what I'll do is, instead of body, use the mirror, the empty I created at the base of my body, which is going to make a perfect mirror for what I need, right? And now we have, as you can see, and again, this is exactly the perfect way for me to explain to you. This is why you want to do it with non-destructive thing, because if you see errors like this, you can fix them. However, if I use the bool tool, well, good luck with that. We had a way harder time to fix this. And also, I have this here, which is pretty easy to do. Just go G, Y, and because we have clipping in our mirror, we just need to connect it, and that's kind of about it. And now we're back to exactly where we were. The only difference is now that part right there that you saw, it's the exact same thing over here. Actually, let me also get into my band right here, right? So let me just move it slightly, ever so slightly, so it actually just copies the form. And yeah, now it's perfect. Now we can make sure that it's not getting into our cut here. Okay, again, this cut is actually one of the more intricate parts, and the reason for it, it's because it's going to differentiate our textures, right? So here's how this will go. This side here, the upper side, will have a first texture. This part will have a second texture. And actually, in one of the versions, the inside here, the cut itself, will have also a texture, different from all the others, right? And also, one of the things that is really cool to use Boolean modifier instead of the loop is the fact that we can actually now play also with this body. So we can apply the scale for this one and give it a bevel, right? With the bevel actually being given, let me actually, get it maybe like a 0.003, increase it a little bit. What will happen when I actually take this as you can see, this will also round my body right here. Now, of course, it's debatable if the geometry is going to be too good because of the geometry that we have with that body. So, you know, debatable if we do want it or not. But again, we can always modify this however we want because we are working in a very non-destructive way. So that's the benefit of doing it. I also create a control panel. It's just simple geometry, as you can see, just cubes and some semi-spheres, because it's actually just half of a sphere dropped in, and all these. So this and this is the only two original bodies, and all the others are just copies. This part right here, you just should come here at the body, copy these faces. I created some loop cuts right here to basically be able to select just this part right here, and then just give it a solidify modifier, as you can actually, a bevel, a solidify modifier, as you can see, and then all you gotta really do, actually, shouldn't have been like this. Yeah, this actually looks much better. This is much better, yeah. See, you can always improve over your work. That is why we work with non-destructive workflows. They are the best type of workflows, and let's use 0.05. And this actually looks even better than it used to look. And with this actually being done, so again, if you want the old version, you can have it. If not, just put a solidify over. I kind of like this version just a tiny bit more because I want it a little more polygonish and squarish looking. And that's how you create this. Of course, the other stuff is, well, pretty much easy to do. However, I did change a little bit of scope. So the scope actually, if you go right here, so what I did is the face that was inside, right? I inserted the face there. That was basically just a simple circle. I inserted it to this geometry right here, created three more loop cuts, and then just proportionally editing it. So what you gotta do is hide everything, but this area, let me just select this. So make sure you only have this area right here, just everything got selected with orange, and hide everything else, right? So with that being done, what you gotta do is go into proportional editing with the smooth, with a smooth proportional editing, fall off, with smooth fall off. That's a better way to say it. You just have to move this geometry a little bit on the X, however you like it and makes it feel good. For that, just a little bit of a bump for the, for like a scope, right? Other than that, all you gotta do is just play around with your geometry, and I do hope you do so, because look at this. I think this actually creates a lot of intricacies and a lot more interesting parts than we give credit for. And I do think this is how you bring your models to the next level, right? If the train was okay done, I think this one is much better, because everything you kind of see put on this robot actually makes a little bit of sense. You have air vents, which, by the way, I didn't show you exactly how I did. Sorry for that. I just realized. So the air vents, again, are one of those things that are a little more interesting, right? So the air vents right here, as you can see them, they have a cutter, but what it is just a small cube, which is pretty easy to create. I'm pretty sure every single one of you can already do that. And what you gotta do is just create the shape around what we have here. So, based on the cut you will create, or if you want to do that, if not, you can make them straight. That's absolutely fine by me. And all you gotta really do afterwards is create some cutters. Now, this is how these look. So it's, again, just some cubes. The only thing that you have to understand is when you will use them. So when you will put a boolean, you will have to understand that this will be used to cut from this one, right? So this is pretty confusing at first, because the first idea that most of you probably will have is to actually do this the reverse way, which is to have this part actually like let me deactivate this. This part like this, while this one is like this, but that would be wrong because then your vents will go in, which don't really kind of make sense because you have to push or to have your, air to be able to fall out and to not let stuff get in. And that's why you kind of do it the reverse way to basically cut through and make the cut kind of like this. And a very important aspect is to have these second vertices right here, because it's two of them. It's on both sides, so don't forget that. You have to have them a little bit out of your original cube from which you cut, so it's actually cutting all the way through. So just make sure you have that, right? And once you have that, usually you would want to array modify this, but if you are like me, and if you went with this a little more intricate model, which is, following again the shape of our body, you cannot really do that. Because as you can see, in one part we're a little more straight, in one we are a little more, angled, inclined. That's the word, right? If you know English, that's the word. If you are like me, you're just saying angled, because why not? All right, so what you gotta do is I just copied and then just modified everything, and I mean that's pretty cool. And then you just hide this, create these as a cutter, and my personal opinion is you should parent it to your object. If you don't know how to parent something, like to parent two objects together, you select the object you want to be the parent. The second, you select the one you want it to be the child, basically, and then you select the parent and you press Ctrl P, which will set parent to, and you will choose object, keep transform, and that will work. And then you can hide it so you can check your result, which would be pretty cool to look at. What else did I do? This here is going to be a aid kit, which is something I thought about afterwards, when I thought this is going to be kind of the emergency kind of robot that will, that should at least be able to help you kind of. So also inside I created some simple cylinders that are supposed to be bandages. You will barely see them because this face right here will be glass. And by the way, when you do edit the aid kit, make sure you actually insert a face so that we can actually texture the glass on top of this one, right? That will actually be pretty important to know. And again, another thing, I created some like medicine bottles. Yeah, this is kind of the stuff we did. These ribs again are pretty easy to do, just small cubes. I array them a little bit, move them on the Z and on the Y to, have this inclined look to it, and then just mirror them on the X, on the Y and on the X to have it on all four sides. Which again is nothing too crazy for it. Other than that, really, there's nothing I can really teach you, which is why I didn't want to make this a super big video. Because I don't think this is something you can't do, right? And I just wanted to show you, like, to make an idea on how to do this. I will show you all the more interesting stuff, so, just stay put, because that will actually show up a little later. So the wheels, the speaker, those will be there. And also, I think, I teach you a little bit of how to bevel a little more like a pro. Because that actually takes a little bit of skill. That's something you have to understand. And one more thing that I wanted to touch a little bit upon before we move on, that's actually a trick that I learned from a guy called Blend the Secrets. Link is going to be in the description of this video, by the way, to his channel, because I think he's an absolute, he has an absolute banger of a channel. He makes shorts, usually. He has some longer videos, but usually they're absolutely amazing. And you can actually create some models on your character. Let me just, well, not necessarily on this character, on any character or object you create. What you need is a Bezier curve, which of course we will delete. What you gotta do is go into the draw tool. And yes, this will be a little crazy. Go into the tool mode, and actually at the tool mode, you need to taper, right? So you have a taper start and a taper end. Let's actually put this to like a 0.7 and this at a 0.7 as well. Select the depth, put it to surface. You can also make this actually be using the pressure if you have a pen. I am going to actually use this a little later with a pen to actually create it, but I'm just doing this so that you learn how to do it. Now, there's one more thing we will have to do, but let's actually try to, you know, draw something. And as you can see, we draw exactly on the surface, which is why we selected the depth to be on the surface of our body. However, we also will need to put some depth to our body. But look at something that happens, which is this is tapered, right? The beginning of our curve and the end of it is actually tapered. And if we actually go to our tool, so go into edit mode, go to our tool again, you can actually change that, right? We can play around, and when we create it, now it's not tapered anymore. You can taper it on one side and on the other one not to be tapered, and so on and so forth. You can create a lot of crazy models using this type of method. I used it a lot in most of my things because I think it's interesting. And the best way to actually use it, if you ask me anyway, is by also adding a mirror modifier, because that will add symmetry. And again, what do we love the most is symmetry. And in case of our body here, again, because it's trapezoidal and because the center is right here and it will not really help us too much, use for your mirror object to mirror it by our empty right here. That should be doing great. And now we could just draw some crazy stuff and nothing can stop us. So from here on out, you can just choose whatever kind of model you want to create. Again, most of the props goes to him. Also, activate clipping on a mirror so that you can actually make this go, you know, in the center. And then just activate the depth and be impressed with what you've created. And now this can be on your actual robot or on any model you want. And this is actually pretty cool. Of course, again, from here on out, all you gotta think of is, well, whatever you want, really. You can model this however you feel like it. Of course, this will look pretty weird because, again, this is the mirrored version. If you don't want to mirror it, just, you know, don't mirror it. But I personally like it a little more. Right, so have this, and then select this, put it into the center. Let me select all this, actually. Put it into the center right here, and actually, don't fill the caps. Just, yeah, but you have to play around with the geometry. I think you kind of got that point. Let me just undo this just a second there. Okay. And GY, make sure you don't exaggerate too much, connect them, and there you are. And if you think this is cool, you can also modify them afterwards, which I think it's even cooler, right? Because after you created this, if you're not totally in love with what you've created, you can actually modify them even more, which is actually extremely useful, really, because this is, if you have a mouse anyway, and trust me, I know how it is to see this kind of stuff and think, oh, only people that have, you know, the pencils, the fancy stuff can actually do this. No, that's not true. I did this, actually, I never tried it with a pencil before. I'll try it for the first time with my stencil. And I'll be totally honest with you, I did pretty great with a mouse. And I think I enjoy it a little more with a mouse because I can just draw whatever and then just modify them by hand afterwards. Yes, of course, the pencil offers you a little bit of a, you know, more hand-drawn type of show, but hey, you know, it's pretty cool any other way, right? So how to make this model for the wheels, right? How I did it. So what you have to do is, while having the wheel actually, you know, auto-mirrored and stuff, all you have to do is actually, you know, select all the faces, use the checker to select to have just, you know, one part of the selection, and then I to insert, and then get this to a dimension you actually kind of like. So kind of about there, it's pretty okay. And then select the other faces. Good. And then, of course, all you gotta do is insert one more time. Now, of course, the dimensions are not gonna be perfectly the same, but, you know, get them as close as you can. So something kind of about there is pretty fine. And now what you gotta do is actually create a model yourself. Of course, don't use just G. Use always GG to move your, your vertices, because otherwise you'll actually affect the model you're creating. And if you ask me, I think you should rather move these two together, right? So either do it something like this, which is something I actually kind of prefer. Either, choose your own model actually, this is the moment you can exercise. So that's how you do it. One more thing that I think is pretty important to touch upon, by the way, while doing this, is that when you bevel, of course, I did tell you before about the bevel modifier, which is really powerful and really important, and it bevels all your edges at once, which is super useful. And also it's non-destructive, which of course is very, very useful in a lot of situations. However, there are some parts where you don't really want to use that. For example, at the body here, as you can see, I actually beveled this by myself, by hand, and there's a reason for it. And you can actually see it right here. For example, this corner and this edge right here, they actually have different bevels, right? So there are moments when you kind of want to do this. I do recommend you to watch Josh Gambrell's or Grambles. I hope I'm not messing that too much up. I'm pretty sure I'm wrong, but I'm gonna have him in the description and probably also showing him right now up here for you to know exactly what his name is and what his channel is. But the thing is, he talks exactly about how to use this effectively, and this actually gives a much more impactful way of looking at your 3D model, because that actually helps a lot with the visualization.
Visualization.
The visualization of your 3D model, right? So basically, for example, on this radio right here, I kind of want to do the same thing, which is I want to have this edge right here, right? So let me actually select all these, which by the way is not going to get selected, well from the start. Because it actually is separated right here. So basically your edge will not know which way to go, right? So again, it's something I did talk in my beginner tutorial a little more in depth on how to select these edges. But basically what you do is actually press, and actually let me get a screencast on just for you to see exactly what I'm pressing and when I'm pressing it. But you press Alt, Shift, left click, and you are able to select everything at once, right? So for example, I want all these and without this to actually be selected, and I want to be able to bevel them, which now I'm able to bevel them separate from everything else. So I can add, a few more edges right here, and then even play around a little more from this menu, which does give me a little bit more freedom about it, right? So I can actually, put actually 5 here, and now I'm pretty good. And of course, I can give a different bevel to this one. Now, yes, of course, that takes more time because this is manual work, but again, it does also help because round edges are not usually the same for like exterior edges, like for this big body. Of course, the round edges are going to be bigger than it's going to be for the inside here. And I actually did the same thing for the bottom, and I actually used the modifier, right? So as you can see, let me actually shade it out of smooth. As you can see, this will bevel everything the same way with, what is this? Like 5, it's not even millimeters. It's like micrometers. So here we are actually modeling the speaker, because this was a little more of a complicated model. So this is the one I would show you, because we're going to use some stuff that it's well, I didn't really present it before, right? So we're going to have a plane. I actually just made our speaker right here, which is literally just a plane. I extruded it and I just inserted this face, took this face from the inside, duplicated it, parted it, and now I have this one, which will be those grids from the speaker. Now I did find a method to actually make that grid, because what I did is I subdivided this by 10, right? And then I went to the modifiers. I used decimate, which will take our geometry, like basically it simplifies it. So the less the ratio, the less geometry you will have, basically, right? And basically what I did is, and I keep saying basically again, then put a wireframe, which is something I thought of, but I realized this actually doesn't work, and that's where I found a clip that actually made me understand why this didn't work. And the clip is called, let me actually check it out to make sure, ChuckCG. The link is going to be down in the description, because it's an awesome channel, and this actually really helped me out. So you could leave it like this and actually just use the thickness of the wireframe and kind of leave it this way. And actually, if I leave it this way, might be good enough. And we can just take some of the decimation out, right? So we have less geometry, or we can leave it like this. Still kind of a lot of geometry, and I still don't really like that, to be honest with y'all. But it's a little better from what I previously had. So yeah, no, you know what? This actually looks pretty good. Looks pretty neat. I might leave it this way. But again, to make that grid look even better, which we can actually do, but again, it will increase your geometry. So if you want a higher poly character, you can do it. I will probably not. But what you gotta do, and it's what I found from ChuckCG, is you can add a subdivision surface before you do the decimation, which makes a lot of sense, because the subdivision will add even more geometry on top of what you already subdivided back there. And you know, you can just keep increasing it, and that will actually make a better grid, which yes, definitely looks better. But again, it will also increase the geometry. Now, of course, we could use normals to bake this at the end, but honestly, I think that's more of a chore than just leaving it this way, which still looks pretty good, to be honest. So yeah, I'm gonna think about it. For now, we're going to leave it with the subdivision and see what's going on the future. But yeah, that's the way you do it. So the reason I wanted to talk about this, rather, this is kind of the first time we used decimation. I do remember I talked to you about this one in the beginner course. But basically, again, the decimation is a lot of the time used when you want to do the retopology and you want to take some of the high poly mesh, down. You use decimation to basically cut from that. So that's basically what this does. Of course, you can set it to different different type of what's it called? Different type of decimations, right? So you can do either collapse, which actually just kind of takes the whole ratio of your vertices, and actually it counts faces. Right now you have 121 because it uses all the faces we have. And actually, if you take down from them, you can see that the number actually goes down as well. Of course, you can use symmetry if you want to have still symmetrical some symmetry for your body, and you can actually, cut it down quite a bit, while still kind of keeping some of that effect in there. And again, you can actually use decimation. What he was doing also is you can, unsubdivide it, and then get like one iteration to have it this way, which actually looks even better. And this will be a little more. So now you have 264 faces instead of 484, which is still good. But compared to the ones we had previously, which is 121. I don't know. I really don't really feel like it's that important. But again, if we can bake them, that's totally different story, because then we'd have this effect without anything. We might also try to actually texture this. So we will just use a bump map to actually create this. But we're gonna work on that when we get to the texturing. However, I just wanted to show you how the decimation works. And also, another thing that we didn't really talk about, which is the wireframe mode. So basically what wireframe does, which I think it's a really interesting and I would say not talked about enough kind of node. Literally this one kind of does most of the work. Subdivision and decimation is more like to just balance stuff out. But basically you can get this effect just with wireframe alone. So you can actually offset this and, you know, make it look a little thicker. So actually you can get kind of that effect. And you know what? I might leave it this way. This looks way more than good enough. And it actually looks more interesting if you ask me. And yeah, basically it takes the edges that you have from your mesh and creates basically, well, it wireframes it, right? So creates like the mesh around the edge, around the wireframe, from where the name comes, right? So that's why it works that way. And you can also use boundary to actually create it also around your boundary, which does help, but again, it will add a little bit more geometry. But actually in this case will actually help us a lot with this space right here. If you see it, see, that actually does make it a little more convenient for us. Right, another thing that I think you guys should know when creating a character, and this is useful especially for where retopology will work, and I will talk about retopology when we actually create a organic character. But again, this has to keep it more simple. This will give us our own character, however, is a more simple to animate and to create kind of character. But I'm going to use this for you to be able to learn. So to make this plane, I just created a small plane on one of my faces. Now what I want to do is get this and rotate it so that it's actually more or less, you know, kind of the same rotation to my face here. And what I will want to do is actually use shrink wrap modifier, which is actually here at the foam. And let me actually apply the scale on this one. And of course, the surface will be the body. This will be above surface and just a little bit above it. So like not meters, definitely not meter. 1 millimeter above the surface should suffice. Now, one of the things you have to understand, now what we do here, what we create here for you to understand is this tape I created for our body, right, for our character, to kind of make it seem like emergency kind of robot, right? And I also did a control panel on the side that I'm going to explain all about a little later on. Well, I will talk to you, like I'll talk you through everything we did, and then I'll actually get to the part I will basically do like this next phase, right? Because again, this video is not about explaining you, you know, in absolute detail what we do. This is gonna be a short video, just explaining you how I got here, how to kind of model this or things like this. You don't have to model this one in particular, and I would be happier if you wouldn't, and if you do your own stuff. But I think it's good for your own, you know, knowledge to know how to do this. Because after this, we're actually going to spend quite a bit of time on texturing, because we're going to do 3 textures. Yes, you heard me right. Not 1, not 2, 3 textures for our robot, because I want it to be special. And I'm going to show you some methods, some that I did talk about before, but I'm going to go a little more in depth, and one that I did not actually talk about before. Well, I talked about the existence of it, but not actually shown it before. So, having this plane now here, with shrink wrap also applied, of course, what we need to do is actually also activate snapping. And the snap should be with face project. Again, let's do it actually on the vertex. I think it's a little better. And align a rotation to target should also be thick and applied, right? And the first thing that I actually want to do before we actually start, actually no, I'm going to first do this and then work around it. So as you can see, we will see first the geometry where our body is actually, because if we deactivate the shrink wrap, our body is still here, right? The shrink wrap is the only thing that's putting our body on our robot, or our plane on our robot's body, right? So what we want to do is actually press on this on cage button. Now what this does, it's basically showing us without actually altering the geometry of our plane, but it shows us how the geometry will look on the actual body, right? And with this being activated, we can actually easier manipulate our, well, geometry. And now we will have to actually move around with this. And as you can see, this here will be a big problem for us. And the only way you can solve this with is adding geometry. It's something that, you know, especially when you do retopology, we will always try to avoid, because it's like you don't want to really do it. However, sometimes there's just no other way than actually adding some geometry, some loops to help you out. And with this here, I actually need to add a few of them so that my body can actually be a little bit above the surface, right? So here, as you can see, it's a very tiny limit that I can actually go on, right? So I kind of have to follow this curvature here. So again, this is not retopology, the retopology of the body. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit after in some other videos that will cover just the idea of retopology. However, this is kind of the way you do retopology. And yes, it's not the nicest thing ever, but it's also not that annoying. Now, one more thing we can add to actually, you know, make our lives easier is, of course, a mirror modifier on the x-axis by the body. So basically, we have to work only on one side of the body, right? We don't have to do the same trick over and over again everywhere, which, you know, makes way more sense. Let's actually move this a little bit downwards so that it doesn't cover the hole here. And as we can see, our geometry is okay. And now we can actually go back and, you know, just create this geometry. Now, of course, here you can also see another problem that we'll run into, which is when you have other geometry in front of you, that geometry will be taken in consideration, which is kind of the downfall, in my opinion, of snapping. That is, it's kind of thinking way too much about the geometry that you're looking at instead of the geometry it should function over. I know it makes sense, and I did understand why. It's just, I would hope so much that, you know, we would be able to not have that, because it's so annoying. I messed up so bad, especially when I was learning about this. I was messing up so bad with it, because it's something, in my opinion at least, pretty hard to get over, or get used to rather. Because, you know, it's pretty hard to, you know, understand, considering you've never done this before, and this is the first time you kind of use the snapping tool. Snapping tool is not easy really to kind of get used to it. And some of the times I really don't recommend it, because even though it is a very useful tool and it does help us a lot with, you know, some precision, especially when it comes to having your bodies aligned on other bodies' faces, which it's actually pretty important most of the time, you still have to understand that this is, you know, sometimes not desirable. And now we have that band, which is right over here. It's just waiting to be textured. It's also low poly, so, you know, we always love when we hear that. We can actually take, you know, some of the, well, we cannot take this one out, right? We can actually leave it over here, but we basically have a very low poly band over our body, which is really okay. And what I do advise you to do now is deactivate snapping, because now we don't need it, and play with your geometry to make it look how you want. However, never press just G. Always move with GG, because that way what you will do is actually move it on the geometry that you've basically created. If you don't do that, right, you might mess up the actual. So if you do this, this might mess up the geometry. In this case, it won't, because when you do this, actually, if you press G, Y, and Y again, this will actually make it exactly like on the angle of our body, which is pretty useful, by the way. But yeah, I do recommend you just press GG all the time and try to manipulate your geometry like this. It's a little safer if you ask me. And really, you don't need to modify this too much. You kind of need just very small movements, you know, to kind of just have this a little bit more. And the reason we deactivated the snapping is because, as useful as snapping can be, it's also extremely annoying. So that's also that. Now, on the translation, on like the lateral side, you can actually move this. And I will move it on the x-axis just a little bit so that I make this a little bit like on the edge here. I put the band right here, and we're good to go. So I'm actually going to also come here and call it well, you get it, a tension band or something. But this is how you do it. This is how we create this. And this is very important for later on when, you know, you will actually do some retopology, because this is the exact preparation for doing that, which I think is pretty cool. There's one more thing I actually did want to show you is how you could have achieved something similar to this cables right here in a different way. Now, I do still think this is the better version, but here's how you could have done it. I didn't really think about it when I did create those cables, but it just hit me up, and well, I don't think now you know which video I made after the outro. You probably don't know the joke if you didn't see the outro. I just realized that. But the thing is, what you have to do, right, is come here, create a circle, and you'll see why we have this cylinder right here in just a second. Basically, you will create a circle. Doesn't really matter how much. This is just for an example. So RX90 to get it up here, and then a GX to move it just a little bit aside of our cylinder here. And with this cylinder selected, apply the scale, and then on modifiers, on generate, go to screw. Now that doesn't really do much, right? Or it seems it doesn't. But then at the screw here, at the offset, if you increase it, this will create something. Again, not too impressive because we don't really see anything changing. However, if instead of the axis Z, we actually choose an object to be our axis, look at that. This will actually get around our object, and you can actually increase this, or even cooler than that, you can increase the iterations. So what that will do is actually wrap around our little object. And I think that's actually a pretty cool thing, and if you're like me, you can already think this can be a suspension, just like that. That's a tip, and this right here is a short. Bye, guys. Actually, it's not bye, it's go to the outro, go to the outro. Sorry. I don't mean to scream, just go to the outro, sorry. Alright guys, this was it for this video. I hope you really liked this. I honestly kind of enjoyed to do it this way. For really two reasons. First, I think I can show you a little more without actually being a nuisance and actually, you know, just spending hours and hours at hand, you know, for a video. So that you basically will do the same thing you probably know already how to do. And yeah, I think this is a little better for you guys. And also, I'm not gonna lie, it's better for me as well. It's taking a little less time, and I can actually concentrate way more on modeling rather than editing and filming and not sleeping. Yeah, I had a lot of nights I didn't sleep, sorry. But I do actually really hope you liked this, and I know I didn't mention it, but I just want to mention it one more time. This is not the last part, so this is not the design, the final design. I'm probably gonna change it, but just with what I mentioned. So everything I used is gonna be used, nothing really more. And I hope this was actually good enough for you guys, and I hope this was interesting enough. I do think I have one more thing I should have added up. Probably I will add it now that I thought about it. But you will never know what it was. I know though. And yeah, with this being said, thank you so much for actually sticking around till the end to watch this video. I hope this helped you, and please don't forget, if you're not subscribed and you stuck all this time till the end, please subscribe. I mean, come on, it's free, it's good. And look at this, if you stayed all this time, you can see this. Oh, come on, it worked. Come on, it's almost there. My energy, you know, is concentrating. Oh, look at this. Floating hell. Yeah, that's why you actually stuck till the end. Bye, guys. They were so dumb.